So is this a continuation of the Kratos we've already played as, or is this a new incarnation? Are you talking about that yet?
Continuation.
Okay.
So it is like the way I kind of see the mythologies is kind of like that Hubble telescope image of all of the galaxies.
The
right?
ultra deep field.
Yeah. So that image shows the universe with all of its individual galaxies. Each galaxy is kind of like a representation of a mythology, and sort of wrap that around the Earth. And at any given moment, all of these mythological belief systems existed. They all deal with a creation myth around their region. It's just separated by geography. So that while the height of some of these mythological beliefs are at different time periods, a lot of them kind of align with a single point in time. And even this one, we're not really in the Viking era.
Right.
A lot of people think Norse, they think Viking, but there's really this amazing prehistory, sort of the migration, and then prior to that, the pre-migration era, where in the Viking era, they always talked about the gods have abandoned us. Thor and Loki. Bottom of the presentation, that was to prepare, Scott, that I'd only had 4 weeks to work on this, so please lower your expectations. So it's August 14th, 2013, and this next image was not actually in the original presentation. I would just do a verbal description of this, but I added it in, so there's a couple images I had to switch out to make this thing work. But what I would talk about was the idea that all the mythologies of the world are kind of like this Hubble telescope image. They are like galaxies individually spread out throughout a complete universe. And the world is the universe. And all the mythologies are sort of origin stories of various cultures throughout the world, beginning at the beginning of time and stretching all the way out. So at any given time, all the mythologies exist together concurrently, and they are simply separated by geography. So it's important because some people had the conception that, hey, Kratos at the end of God of War 3 destroyed the world. Well, he destroyed what they believed the world was in Greece, which was their world. Everybody believed their world was the only world. In fact, we still believe that today.
Find that missing piece from that ruin. Was it Atreus was reading it? And it was like, oh, there's a piece missing. And then it's the one depicting, I think, Tyr in the middle of it's like the Greek symbol for it's like the omega sun for war or whatever. So we were theorizing basically like, is that kind of like you said, like Norse was the first mythology you want to go to, but then you also see the Triskelion, and then you see the Eye of Horus. I might be butchering which these are. Is that an intent maybe down the road to build a larger universe outside of just Greek and Norse?
There is a connection to that. Its first goal was to show how Tyr connected to all of these other mythologies. Tyr was kind of the first god of war within the Norse realm. Kind of got screwed over by the gods, right? And sort of pushed aside, and Odin kind of took over in that respect. And we portrayed him as this interesting kind of like the more beloved god, the god who actually connected to other mythologies, other cultures, and was trying to unify and bring them together, but kind of rabble-rousers of the Aesirs sort of ruined that. And there's these references in the mythology of actually having certain characters actually reference or interact with, say, the Roman gods, which I thought was always fascinating. That I don't know if it's simply a later translation or even when the Christians started to move Norse mythology to away from paganism and more towards Christianity, that maybe they had folded some of these things in. But I always love that idea that on the planet, since the beginning of time, all these cultures are having their origin stories, right? And geography is separating all of them so that concurrently all these mythologies are going on, right? There isn't one that says, this is how everything was. It was, this is how this culture was brought up, and this culture was brought up in this way. And who knows if they were to crisscross and have some crazy Norse and Egyptian and Mayan Justice League of people.
Speaking of creation,
or were you thinking of this as like the beginning of a whole new Norse chapter for Kratos?
I originally started pitching this to people and saying, the mythologies of the world are sort of cultural origin stories separated by geography. So when you think about the mythologies, I say the visual is the Hubble telescope image of all the galaxies, right? That super long exposure shot that shows all the galaxies of the world as part of a whole universe, right? And I think you look at the planet, and it is really just these mythological stories all over the world that kind of exist at the beginning of time all the way into present. So, historically in their timelines, so a lot of these stories are about before man, right? So that they're like, this happened before, and we were talking about what this was. So these connections to all of that was, okay, when he leaves Greece, he is leaving sort of the sort of ecosphere of this mythology, but there are so many others that exist all over the place, and that when he goes to Scandinavia, he ends up in Scandinavia. It is kind of this line of demarcation, right? This sort of BC AD change to, okay, it is still him, but he has entered into this sort of new belief system, right? It is like going to another country, right? That, you know, everyone's speaking a different language. There is a different sort of set of rules and cultural norms, right? It's just, it happens to be that there's a bunch of gods hanging around with a bunch of monsters hanging around.
Yeah,
So,
I remember you saying not that long ago that this is this version of Kratos, but you could delve into other mythologies with him in the future and I think that's really interesting because it's something that, you know, having him be part of one and the idea that it would overlap is jarring, but also really interesting. It's like you can do a lot of weird stuff there with different mythologies just intertwining.
And having like even slight tangential connections. Like I very, very, very intentionally have this period of time from the end of 3 to the beginning of